To go along with a recent Starfield update as well as studio visit, Todd Howard recently gave several new interviews. And these have actually been pretty informative. They're giving us insights into things we simply haven't heard much about before, like this new Elder Scrolls 6 engine upgrade, the future of Starfield, and perhaps one of the most surprising areas, we get several questions and answers around Fallout 4, including things like broken updates and even that mod storage space increase. Shout out to Mortismal Gaming for actually asking about this during his interview time.
It's like increasing the storage space, something that we kind of put off. There's some internal plumbing we need to do, but it's more so there's a lot of user pain there. So there might be a certain audience that says, I want my storage space increased. This is particularly on Xbox, because when we change it, there's nothing we can do about it. It just trashes all of your storage space. And so there's a lot of user pain there. And so you have your very informed users that are kind of at the top of the pyramid that we're thinking about, but there's a larger one where their game's just going to break and they have no understanding why, even if we're providing it. So we're still working to smooth that out.
And the answer here is unfortunate, but also kind of reality as it seems right now. Fallout 4's mod storage space increase was revealed back in October, and the storage space expansion is going to be a problem for more casual users. You have to back up your load order like this, make sure you actually do this for Fallout 4, otherwise when the mod storage space expansion ships, your load order will be wiped. So lots of people are just going to miss that. I totally get where Todd Howard is coming from in this quote, but at the same time, the mod storage space expansion also just wasn't a priority, and that's become very clear now. The update has been delayed several times. We're now here in mid-March, and we get another delay a few weeks ago as more time is needed to get things right, which likely means this isn't coming for several more weeks to months still. I would expect after all of these Starfield releases in April, which is probably taking up a lot of the development resources right now. So for lots of players, the Fallout 4 Anniversary update just added in new paid content or broke some other aspect of their game. The one big, really the biggest community requested feature, more mod storage space, was never mentioned in any of the trailers for the update and only got revealed after the Anniversary update went live and broke a bunch of other features. Now it's been several months, Fallout Season 2 hype has largely died down and plenty of fans have just moved on while waiting. And even technically the Anniversary update has reduced access to mods in the interim. Now mods require about double the required space to actually install. So basically to install a mod, you need double the download size for working space. So if you don't have a bunch of free space available, some mods are just way too big to use now. Not a big deal when you have 100 GB, but a massive issue when you only have 2 GB. So many mods over 500 megabytes are very difficult to get working. User pain is definitely an element, but Bethesda speaks about some of the stuff with an almost rose-tinted glass. And I think that broadens the disconnect with fans who are actually experiencing these issues day to day, and many of these fans are still very frustrated. Take Todd Howard here, still with Mortismal, on the broken Fallout 4 updates.
And so just to let people know, it's a priority for us. Whenever we see that happening, we're always trying to do better. And I think we're in an okay place, but again, a lot of room to grow in terms of when we update our games, that nobody is sort of seeing that. And there's also the world of script extenders that kind of piggyback on the executable. That's a tricky one too. We try to give them an early look to sort of prepare for it, but even that's tricky for those groups that do it. But just let people know, we're thinking about that, right? We're thinking about script extenders when we're doing things and what is the timing. And, we do our absolute best there.
So of course, those are all very good things to say. Todd Howard is acknowledging the issues while recognizing they need to improve going forward. But to me, it's really the gravity or lack thereof that marks the gap. The handling of those Fallout 4 updates were some of the lowest points for Bethesda in my eyes, and I think a lot of fans feel this way. To release an update for your game out of nowhere after having nothing for years, break the game with that update, leave it that way for over a year, only to break it again the next year and it takes several more months to fix is genuinely wild. This is a decade-old game, and it is becoming temporarily less playable for a lot of people after these updates. It happening this many times is clearly a symptom of some kind of underlying problem that needs to be fixed. And it's not even like this is totally over yet. Some of the updates and content is still awaited on some platforms. PlayStation 4 lost its DLC access for months, and even still, nobody on PlayStation has access to these freely released creations. Although, hopefully this feedback is being heard, and there are very exciting things on the way. Since launch, Bethesda has been releasing free creations for Fallout 4. We've gotten quite a few of these now, and they're all really cool and genuinely nice additions to the game. Several of these are New Vegas themed, some are based around things from the Fallout TV show, but these are new high quality and lore friendly weapons added into Fallout 4 totally for free. It really does seem like these are getting dropped for free as a response to some of the pushback over so much of the new content being paid. And well, yeah, they aren't on PlayStation just yet. That is supposedly coming still, and whenever that does drop, it'll be a really cool moment as something else is coming to Fallout 4 even still. One thing I can talk a bit about is Fever Dreams, this being the new Nate and Nora creation coming to Fallout 4. We got a small teaser around the anniversary update last year, but I got to see a bit more at my recent studio visit to Bethesda. This is being done by Kingath Creations. They were hired by Bethesda to make it, and they worked with Bethesda to bring back the original voice actors for Nate and Nora. You know how on all of these Fallout 4 quest mods, they have to reuse dialogue for the voiced protagonist? Yeah, well, this one doesn't. And the team here are taking full advantage of this opportunity. Like I mentioned before, it's being done by Kingath Creations, so many of the members here are the same people to make Sim Settlements 1 and 2. They have a ton of experience in Fallout 4, and being able to actually get the voice actors back is a massive opportunity for some really epic content. And to be clear, this is only possible thanks to Bethesda. Bethesda are the ones who got Nate and Nora back from a funding and access perspective. We got to see a trailer of Fever Dreams at the studio visit, and this looks absolutely awesome. The best part being, it's coming to Fallout 4 totally for free. I have no idea when it's coming out, that wasn't shared, but I have to imagine that this is going to drop with the mod storage space increase, considering that's the only other major thing we're still waiting on for Fallout 4. So yeah, I am heavily criticizing Bethesda here for their handling of this situation around these updates and even some of the communication with that, but at the same time, I do think they're listening, and I think there is going to be a time, somewhat soon, where Fallout 4 has increased mod storage on console, slightly less bugs than before, and we have gotten several really cool free releases from Bethesda, including what seems like it'll be one of the most unique mod or creation experiences so far with Fever Dreams. I'm not entirely sure how big or small this project will end up being, but it's coming for free, so it's really hard to complain. And we also saw a bit of this on the Starfield side with the recent Trackers Alliance update. This originally dropped for $7 as one mission and some items and got a ton of pushback. It just wasn't worth that money. But now they've updated it over a year later with 5 additional missions and a bunch of additional items. All of this included in the same exact purchase, so it's just more value for the $7, 6 missions instead of 1. I do hope there's a similar thing happening right now for Fallout 4, that the game actually ends up in a better spot after all of this, actually taking in some of the feedback from fans. Bethesda constantly says they're always listening and reading what fans have to say, and while things have been handled somewhat poorly thus far and taken way too long, I am still hopeful that we end up in a better spot. But of course, the main purpose of a lot of these interviews was Starfield, and many are wondering what's next for that game. This new Freelance update looks really interesting, but it has been 17 months since Shattered Space. I do think it's fair to wonder when the next batch of content might be coming, even after all of this stuff coming in April. Thankfully, while speaking to Mortismal Gaming, Todd Howard does confirm more is coming to Starfield.
No, definitely not the end. You know, I think particularly going into our games now, we see how many people play them for so long that, you know, the trick for us is to be developing a new game like TES 6, while also supporting, you know, big audiences we clearly have in Fallout and Starfield, etc. And so, no, definitely not the end for Starfield. We're excited about this release. We've started to work on and plan, so we call it like the next year 3, but that may come in different formats.
I think that quote is actually pretty interesting and even quite a bit telling, as Todd Howard mentioned that year 3 might come in different formats for Starfield. The Starfield presentation itself was given by Tim Lamb, who seems far more active in the day-to-day development of the game, and he mentioned how the next big piece of content after Terran Armada and Free Lanes wasn't fully mapped out yet, and they kind of want to see the reaction to Free Lanes and Terran Armada first before fully deciding on what's next. Coupling that together with Todd Howard's quote here, I have to imagine the reception to this will have a big influence on Starfield's future, particularly the scope of Starfield's future. If things start to really turn around on Steam, and hey, maybe the game really connects with that PS5 audience, maybe this justifies a much larger next DLC for Starfield. One thing fans have noticed is how Shattered Space was referred to as an expansion, and of course priced at $30, while Terran Armada is listed as just a DLC, and of course only $10. This definitely seems much smaller overall, and even Shattered Space was fairly light content-wise for $30. I don't personally think it's worth that price tag. So it really seems like this is Bethesda's moment. They have to see what happens with Starfield after they attempt all of this stuff, the major free update they release on PS5, as well as another expansion that many players will just get for free. But before Bethesda has that data, it's likely very hard to figure out what exactly Year 3 is. And even further, paid mods are likely a major component of this all, and might even be what Todd Howard was referring to with Year 3 coming in different forms. These paid mods are most well integrated in the Starfield modding scene. What many people don't realize is Bethesda is partially or fully funding at least some of these. So you have authors or even teams pitching to Bethesda, and then they have the potential to approve more or even encourage larger pitches overall. So Bethesda has the ability via their modding team, via this verified creator program, to incentivize paid and larger scale content to be produced. So even if Bethesda themselves aren't making a ton of Starfield DLC going forward, they can invest more money in paid creations. And I personally think this is something we're going to start seeing more and more of going forward. But of course, the title many are most curious about right now when it comes to Bethesda is The Elder Scrolls 6. And we actually got a great update to something recently changed around The Elder Scrolls 6. All the way back in 2016, Todd Howard revealed that they were working on The Elder Scrolls 6 to Jeff Keighley, but said the tech wasn't even ready yet.
You know, I have to be careful what I say. It's a very long way off. I could sit here and explain the game to you, and you would say, that sounds like you don't even have the technology. How long is that going to take? And so it's something that is going to take a lot of time, what we have in mind for that game.
And we actually did get an update on this a couple of years later. Back in 2018, Jeff Keighley was back with Todd Howard and asked if the tech was there now.
It's getting closer.
Okay. What is your vision? I'm sure you don't want to say a lot about it, but I mean, what's the type of technology that you were looking to bring to life to be able to make?
I don't want to spoil anything yet. I think the teasers that we put out they're kind of A, announcing the game, and B, ones of tone.
Yep.
You know, how does the game feel? You know, hints at where it's set for both of them, both Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6.
And since this has just been there in many of those Elder Scrolls 6 discussions, wondering what exactly this all meant. What was the tech? More powerful consoles? Are we waiting for the next gen even still? Or was it some kind of new other technology related to gaming overall, or maybe even just the engine getting upgraded? But thankfully, during his recent interview, Mortismal Gaming asked Todd Howard once again, is the tech there yet?
No, I mean, that's a very old comment, and it has nothing really to do with the availability of hardware. It has to do just with where we're at internally, with our own engine, what we want the games to do. You know, Starfield was clearly a big step and the basis for Creation Engine 3 that we're working on right now to do everything we want to do for that game.
So finally, Todd Howard clarifies that what he really meant was their engine being in the right spot for their games, and in this case, the engine being in the right spot for their vision of The Elder Scrolls 6. This, of course, being a vision that Todd Howard was talking publicly about all the way back a decade ago now. Although the response here does make it seem like this is no longer a problem. The tech is finally there, and we've also just recently learned that The Elder Scrolls 6 is using Creation Engine 3. Starfield was notable because it was the jump to Creation Engine 2, and Todd Howard even mentioned having difficulties with that engine upgrade. But during this recent studio visit in one of the roundtable Q&As, Todd Howard mentioned how the Creation Engine 3 upgrade was a lot more smooth compared to the CE2 upgrade. Basically Basically, the team learned a lot from what went wrong with Starfield and CE2, so this time around with CE3, things were much better when it came to development and playability. Todd Howard described how they could far more consistently play The Elder Scrolls 6 and test what they were building even as some of the engine upgrades were being done, something that seemingly didn't go nearly as smooth with Starfield. I think for a lot of us, and I know it's true for me, the reveal of Creation Engine 3 was a surprise. But now two things are clear: that the engine upgrade went pretty well. Todd Howard expands on this during his interview with IGN.
But the one thing I'd say is really the tech. As we're going to Creation Engine 3, again, the team has done a really incredible job at not just pushing what it is, but how it's integrated into our development cycle. So you don't feel that what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, like the game goes down. So we're in a fortunate position where that's a game where, the builds are really consistently working every day.
But also that this upgrade was required for something in The Elder Scrolls 6, and it seems like this something is pretty close to the core overall vision. Todd Howard has now said numerous times while referencing this subject that he doesn't want to reveal whatever this thing is because it'll spoil something. Todd Howard says here that Starfield, aka Creation Engine 2, was a big step, but to do everything they wanted in The Elder Scrolls 6, they needed something more in the engine. What could that be? What couldn't Creation Engine 2 do? Speaking with IGN, we did hear this exact question get asked by the interviewer.
I think there are things outside of the rendering that you would expect as it comes to data systems, how our worlds load, how they load content and present things of high detail close to the camera without spoiling it,
And Todd Howard does go on to mention how he really can't reveal all of the engine changes without spoiling things, but even that answer is interesting. About a year ago, we got the supposed leak of The Elder Scrolls 6. It's not confirmed or denied, it definitely just could be Skyrim or AI and Skyrim merged together somehow. But the very notable takeaway, of course, is the view distance. You can see insanely far in this leak, and what Todd Howard is saying here with data system improvements, handling how the world loads and persistent high detail objects close to the camera, this really feels to me like it could be a ship travel system where you're moving much faster and in turn loading the world around you much quicker, with insanely high detail environments and cities all around you having to load in. We've seen this fan map of a potential High Rock and Hammerfell Elder Scrolls game, and you can see just how much sailing potential there is. Now imagine each of these small isles has some kind of handcrafted location to explore, and you can freely travel between them in your ship. While Starfield has the vehicle construction and control system, and even the high detail cities, it doesn't have all of that together. Each major city is divided by a load screen or potentially even several. And Starfield, when flying around, you're only ever coming up to relatively low detail planets. It's not like you're pulling up to a massive city and have to load that in nearly instantly. And I really suspect this could be one of the major engine upgrades in The Elder Scrolls 6, actually having more freeform exploration and transportation via boats, but the older versions of the engine might have just not been able to keep up with that much data streaming to you at once. But there is likely more here. Last month, when speaking to Greg Miller on the Kinda Funny Games cast, Todd Howard talked more broadly about what they're attempting with The Elder Scrolls 6.
We have a style of game that we really, really like that I think people expect from us.
Sure.
And there's a lot of innovation to be done there still, so that when you step into a world, you feel like you're experiencing it really for the first time, a game like that. And I think, we're happy with where it's headed right now. That's what I could say.
My original speculation upon hearing that was something similar to Starfield's Unity. After going through Unity, you'll be in a universe with something different, some kind of modifier or an aspect of that universe that is just changed from other players' experiences. I can totally picture that in The Elder Scrolls 6 being applied to factions or maybe a certain type of NPC, some element of the game that is fundamentally different from one playthrough to the next. And even here in this interview, both Todd and Mortem speak very highly of this expanded difficulty menu in Starfield. I have to imagine we're going to see this expanded even further and included in The Elder Scrolls 6. Them talking about it here, but even further, it also popped up in Doom: The Dark Ages, and it just is a lot more fun. Having more variables to tweak and change up with the difficulty gives you a lot more potential for making that next playthrough feel unique. One of my favorite examples is with RimWorld. You of course have the default major difficulty options, but you can tweak so much about this difficulty, and via this you can totally change the experience, giving yourself a ton of customizability and replayability right out of the box just with a few modifiers. But one of the other interesting comments we've gotten as of late from Todd Howard is around how much he likes shadow drops.
at the end of the day, my preference is to not talk about the stuff. And then, my perfect version is one day it just appears. That probably won't be the case.
This has led many in the Elder Scrolls 6 community to viewing a shadow drop as very possible for the Elder Scrolls 6, but that seems pretty unlikely now. Many are still hopeful for a 2027 release for TES 6, and if that is the case, I imagine we'll be getting that familiar summer showcase reveal to a November release, around 5 months from reveal to release. But I think whenever Fallout 3 Remastered does come around, we've heard some rumors about this even recently, but I still think it's probably a ways away, but that game will almost certainly be a shadow drop. It definitely seems like Bethesda likes it for their smaller projects, but seemingly we aren't getting many more of those. And in recent interviews, we've heard more and more from Todd Howard how he wishes he could get Bethesda games out faster, although we've never really heard how. And Mortesmal here does ask about that in his interview, even asking if they would consider smaller games in the future, but Todd Howard's response here is pretty notable.
Well, we feel we're going very fast. I get the point on sort of, your big tentpole releases, but look, given our scale, we're doing more than we have more in development, more releases over the last few years than we've had. And with that, you have to, keep in mind Fallout 76, such a big thing for us. We're on our 67th update that's coming out, I think. So the amount of things, if you look at like going out the door as far as updates and everything, it's a lot. And again, our trick is with our scale, feeding these massive franchises that people love while building new ones. And so, we always want to be faster about it, but I don't ever want to make that the goal. I think when you just focus on speed and getting things out, maybe you don't do your best work. Maybe they're not as special as they could be for the audience. And I also feel sometimes there are franchises too where you want them to breathe a little bit.
As I think what's said there makes it pretty clear that Bethesda's releases aren't speeding up anytime soon. It doesn't really seem like smaller releases are on the table either, and as far as we've heard publicly, Todd Howard and Bethesda Game Studios are the only ones working on Fallout and the Elder Scrolls right now. There are no major rumors of it being passed off or like some other studios being open to work on Fallout. We even recently had a rumor that another Xbox studio was working on some kind of Fallout project, but it was cancelled. So based off all of those considerations, and then this quote from Todd Howard, well, Todd Howard is seemingly in control of these franchises. To me, it really seems like the current release cadence is here to stay, but Bethesda does have plans to start ramping up the content in between releases even more. I have to imagine we're seeing more DLC. In that last year interview with Maddie, Todd Howard talked about that. And even right now with Starfield, we are seeing a longer support tail with DLC than we have for any of their previous games. This will also come in the form of paid mods, both from Bethesda, but also funding stuff from the community, and seems like this is really Bethesda's strategy going forward. Still taking their time with major releases, having 5-year gaps potentially between them, but those 5 years in between being a lot more content rich. Either way though, those are some of the recent insights we've gotten from Todd Howard into the future of Bethesda and what's going on with some of their games. If you enjoyed, get subscribed, because I do have a lot more content coming, particularly around Fallout.